1, 2. I'm stood here wondering I can't hear anything. I've got to plug my headphones in, haven't I? Silly Billy. 1, 2. I'm stood here wondering I can't hear anything. I've got to plug my headphones in, haven't I? Silly Billy. So where's that coming from? Okay guys, you want a little bit of a back fit here. We've got a bit of echo going on, haven't we? Where's that coming from? Could be there. Could be there. Whatever. Let's get this show on the road. The UK art takeover. Here we are in Belfast Dock. Good morning. Good morning to you. You didn't hear very much of that, did you? And I'll tell you why, because I've just plugged my laptop in and the audio hasn't connected across. So let me just check why that didn't work. We are failing fast and miserably here, but it really doesn't matter because this is how we learn. This is how we learn. I drove all the way from London to Scotland yesterday, Stranraer in Scotland, and I got on a ferry. An overnight ferry, as you could just see there, and I'm on the ferry now, we're just coming in and just about to arrive in Belfast. And here we are getting off the boat.
Barry, if you can let the box deck run, mate. Yes, ma'am.
And if that doesn't look like Belfast Harbour, then you're not using your imagination, because today is all about using your imagination, using your creativity to dream big, to aim not high like that, but higher than that, to find your art, to find your passion. We're here today. I can't believe how exciting this is today. We are here today in Belfast at this incredible place, the Belfast Titanic Museum. Unbelievable. Look at that building. What does it remind you of? Does it remind you of the front of the Titanic maybe? Because that is an incredible museum. And we're here today at 10 o'clock this morning now as part of the Steamco Rocket Kids Club, which we kicked off last week in London and Leeds and all over the UK with this amazing man you see here. This is a man called Homer Hickam. And he wrote a book that you can see over here. Where's it gone? He wrote the book that you can see here, which is called Rocket Boys. God, my clicker's not working very well today, is it? That little book there called Rocket Boys. And that is a book about him when he was a little boy in 1957 in a dead-end coal mining town called Coalwood, and there was only one job, and that was being a coal miner, and he didn't want to be a coal miner, and he saw a silver star, a dot in the sky, and it was the first ever satellite, and it inspired him to learn to make rockets. He made rockets. His mum encouraged him, the community encouraged him, but the most important person was his teacher, who gave him a book, and then even his dad started helping, and he made a rocket that went 6 miles high in the sky. And last week Homer Hickam videoed in and chatted to us all about his life and his work with these girls and other children from across the UK, and this is what happened.
20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition
8,
sequence
7,
start.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whoa! Can you see that?
Oh, wow!
Can you see it? Whoa!
I know.
stay asleep for me,
We are so grateful to Homer Hickam for being the patron of the Rocket Kids Club. And the Rocket Kids Club is a place where you can be inspired, where you can be creative, and where you can share your creativity. And we sent what we call art time boxes to those girls there in Westminster and to a little boy, Rowan, and his brother Samuel up in Leeds. And this contains everything you need to be creative. It's got a little robot like that. It's got some coloured paper like this, so you can make rocket. Oh, that's funny old paper, isn't it? I wonder why that paper is empty. I wonder why that paper didn't have anything to... Look, this is funny old paper, isn't it? Gosh. I'm going to send that paper back. Look, it's got no colour. Oh, that's better. The red paper is a bit better, isn't it? I wonder what is going on there. And there's some yellow paper and some blue paper. I thought I had some blue paper. Yes, I've got some blue paper. Look, I've got all those different coloured papers. But there's a funny colour paper up here that hasn't got any colour. Isn't that strange? I wonder what's that all about? Well, I'll tell you later, because today we are going to look at how television programmes and films like Titanic are made. Because today we're going to do some making. I'm going to get all of you to come on a journey with me today. We're going to pretend it's 1912, April 1912, and we're in Belfast on a very exciting day. A very exciting day for the spirit of adventure, a very exciting day for engineering, a very exciting day for lots and lots of people, because Titanic went on its first ever voyage. And it was a tragic day, a very, very sad day, because many, many people lost their lives because it sunk, as I know you know. So today we have to respect those people. We mustn't be silly, we mustn't make fun of the fact that many, many people died. But at the same time, we have to take inspiration from their heroism, from their engineering. And today we're all going to make boats. And you're going to send me photos, hopefully, on blue or green backgrounds, just like that magic paper there. And we're going to put them in a video, and we're going to create what's called a flotilla of boats. Lots of boats. Your boats will be able to be in a film with the real Titanic later on. And that's what today's activity is all about here in the Rocket Kids Club. Your boat, your boat, your boat. What colour are you going to make your boat out of? What are you going to make your boat out of? We're going to have a few ideas. We're going to chat about that a little bit later on. But today is the Rocket Kids Club, a safe place where you can be inspired, where you can create and you can share and show what you've made to all other people all over the world in the Rocket Kids Club and on the internet. It's a place for kids like you, rocket kids like you, who don't just aim high, but aim higher than high. It's for creative kids like you and your creative carers. Now, they might be, if you're in a school at the moment, you've got teachers and people who care for you, who are looking after you in school at the moment. If you're at home, you might have some mums and dads and aunties and uncles, or if you're in a care home, people there who care for you, they might help you. But we're building the Rocket Kids Club social media site, a bit like a face space or a Facebook type place, an internet place where you can go and connect with creative carers, people who are safe and creative, who can help, give you some ideas and give you some suggestions and tell you what they think of your projects, even if you haven't got somebody at home that you can share it with. So it's going to be really, really exciting. And I am so excited to be here at the Titanic Museum in Belfast. Today, we're going to look at a few things. We're going to Now, the Rocket Kids Club briefing, we're going to brief you a creative activity. At 2 o'clock, we're going to do what we call a show and tell, where you're going to send your photos in on social media with the hashtag Art of Belfast, hashtag UK Art Takeover, and all sorts of hashtags, I love boats, whatever. And we're going to look at the pictures that you've taken and put some of them in the video. And I'm going to show you how we can use special technology, what I call transporter technology, that makes things invisible. And if I press a button here, I can show you very, very quickly why that's the case. Look, that paper's green, but everything that's green disappears when I press that button. Green things disappear when I press that button, and that is our digital transporter technology, which allows me to be anywhere in the world. Last week I was in a cardboard box factory. I was in the world's biggest loo roll factory. I was on the top of Big Ben, and my mum thought it was real. She thought I was really in Parliament Square with thousands and thousands of people with unrolling a big banner that said I love art, and I'll show you that later on. So that's what we're doing at 2 o'clock. We're going to look at what you've done, and I'm going to show you the special video technology using Adobe Premiere and Adobe Rush and programs like that. You can do these things yourself at home. And then at 3 o'clock, we're going to do an Art Connects show. And that's for the grown-ups and all the adults. That's for us to showcase and celebrate and inspire creativity by looking at the art of Belfast and the art of Northern Ireland. And we've got an empty show at the moment. We've got a few people who are going to get back to us. But if anybody wants to come on the show today to talk about their art, maybe they're a teacher, or maybe they're a poet or a theatre worker, or maybe they're an engineer or a maker or a coder, or just like telling stories, then you will be able to come on the show and tell us all about it between 3 and 5 o'clock today. Now, the Eden Project is a very special place to me, and they're very passionate about community and the art of community and connection. And we're hoping to get some people that I met at the Eden Projects in November last year, a big community camp we went on. And I'm hoping somebody from Eden Project in Cornwall might be able to join us as well, because the Eden Project are opening an Eden Project in Northern Ireland, I've read. So we're going to find out hopefully all about that. So that's what we're doing today. It's all part of the Get Creative at Home campaign, which is a project that's been organised by, my clicker's a bit rubbish, isn't it? Click, that's better. The Get Creative at Home campaign. It's part of the Voluntary Arts Festival, which is supposed to just be for a week, 9th to the 16th of May. But because of the virus and because everybody's locked in, they've made it a whole month, and they've called it hashtag Get Creative at Home. And it's supported by the BBC and lots of cool people like that. So we're proud to be part of that. And we're doing a 14-day tour of the United Kingdom. So today we're in Belfast. Tomorrow we're going to be in Wales. So if anybody's in Wales wants to get involved, then let us know. We think we're going to be at the Big Pit, actually. The Big Pit, which is a fantastic coal mine museum. And we haven't even told anybody yet because we're making it up as we go along. We wake up in the morning and think, where should we go today? And we emailed the BBC in Ulster, and they might even be talking about it later on. So fingers crossed for that, because the more that know about this, the better. Today we're calling our Little and Large show. The Little and Large show, that's a picture of Titanic superimposed in front of a massive, massive cruise ship. And it might even be Titanic 2, because they're building a Titanic 2. What does that picture say to you? What does that picture say to you about the way the world's changed since 1912 and 2020? What does that say to you about the way things are different today? Do you think one boat is bigger and better, or do you think it's better for the environment? Do you think one boat is smaller and more fun to be on, or would you rather be on the big one with surf machines and swimming pools and squash courts and baseball hoops? Is it responsible for the environment? Do you think that big ship uses lots of petrol and lots of fumes? Do you think it makes lots of waste? Who do you think works on it? I went on a cruise ship once for a weekend for a conference, and all the people who worked on there, nearly all the people I could see, all the waiters and all the cleaners, came from one village in India. And they went to work on the boat for 2 years, and they never went off the boat. They lived on it all their time for 2 years, and then they saved up enough money to go and buy a piece of land and a goat, I believe, that's what I was told, and live happily ever after. Is that a life? I don't know. These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves, especially now we're in lockdown, or they're not locking us down, in lock-in, the UK art lock-in, community lock-in. These are the questions we've got to ask ourselves about the world tomorrow, the world we want to build, because you, Rocket Kids, it's for you to build this world for all of us, and that's what we're looking at and talking about today. I'm going to have a look at my YouTube feed here. If you want to comment, the best place to do it is on YouTube, because I struggle to keep up with anything else. We've got some people watching there by the look of it. That's good. Although we might have 2 YouTube feeds, actually. That's not good, is it? Which one might we be on? I think I made a mistake and clicked the button twice, which might mean we're on 2. Oh, there, that's the one that everybody can see. There's 2 people watching. If you'd like to come on later on, or if you'd like us to say hello to you, put a shout out, put a little comment in the bottom of that YouTube button. I need to get something a bit fancier working this, but I just haven't had time to read the manuals. Haven't even had time to drink my tea, actually. I'm with a cup of tea. So today we have got some very, very special guests. The first person I'd like to get on to introduce you to now is a lady whose great granddad was actually on the Titanic the day it left Belfast. I can't believe how lucky we are to have the chance to speak to this lady, and I'm going to give her a ring now. And I only connected with her last night because I looked at the website and I sent an email, and I can't believe that she's going to come on now and talk to us about the Titanic and about her great granddad, and what happens in Belfast, and tell us all about the museum, because nobody at the museum was able to join us today because of the virus. They've all been furloughed, which means they've got to stay at home and get some money off the government, but they're not allowed to do their job. So we've had to do it on our own, which is fine. It's not a problem. And there's Susie there. So Susie is on a computer here, and I'm going to press some buttons and I'm going to get her up on the screen here. So let me look and see which button I want to press here. There we go. So just 1 second, Susie, don't you worry. Okay, so let's get Susie on. Okay, can you hear me, Susie?
I can indeed, yes.
You can. And you can see me on Skype there, can't you?
Yes, I can. You're looking great.
That's good. Well, I'm going to probably turn that off, actually. You haven't got YouTube on, have you? I don't suppose at the moment.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Well, let me just get rid of that, because that will get rid of me. I'm here, don't you worry. So I'm going to press this button, and on the screen now, everybody, we've got Susie Miller, live and direct from Belfast. Say hello to everybody, Susie.
Hi, good morning, everybody. How are you doing?
This is fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us at sort of it's not even 12 hours notice, I don't think, is it?
That's okay. I like to do everything on the fly.
That's my style. You're my kind of Northern Irisher, if there's such a thing as a Northern Irisher, Northern Islander. So Susie, tell us a little bit about your connection. I just mentioned very briefly your great granddad. I mean, what a fantastic story. Tell us a little bit about him and the story that you tell people that when they come to Belfast.
Sure. Okay. So his name was Thomas Miller. So he was my father's father's father. And he worked on the construction of Titanic down where you are in the shipyard back in 1910, 1911. He was one of the engineers. And he found himself in a situation where he had 2 young boys to look after. And sadly, his wife died in early 1912. So that kind of changed his direction. He decided that he was going to go on Titanic as one of its crew, and that he would relocate to New York City so that the family could have a fresh start. So he was hired by White Star as an assistant deck engineer, and he was very excited about it all. And he had to leave his 2 boys behind because obviously he was working on the ship, so he wouldn't have had time to look after them. And so just before he left Belfast, he gave my grandfather and his brother something to remember him by. Each of the boys was given 2 1912 pennies. And Tommy said to them, "Don't spend those until we're all together again." So off he sailed on Titanic, and my grandfather waved him off as it sailed down Belfast Rock. And then, of course, we know what happens, that the ship hits the iceberg and things go badly wrong. And because he was one of the crew, he would have been helping other people to get onto lifeboats and stuff like that. So sadly, he didn't make it off the ship. But my grandfather never forgot that his father had said to him before he sailed, "Don't spend those pennies until we're all together again." And so he didn't. He kept them as a memory of his father. And they've been passed on through the generations of my family, and we've still got them today.
Wow, that's fantastic. And so he really was on a one-way ticket. Well, hopefully, it was always intended to be, excuse me there, that's a disrespectful comment, but he was always intended to just go on a one-way ticket to start a new life in New York, really.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he was one of the crew. So, yeah, people often ask me when I'm going around schools here in Northern Ireland and talking about him. One of the questions I get asked quite a bit by the pupils who are studying it here is what kind of ticket would he have had and what would he have paid for his ticket? And the answer is that he didn't have a ticket because he was one of the crew. He didn't need to buy a ticket. He was working his passage. he probably would have come back to Belfast at some stage to pick up his two boys if he had made it, and bring them all together for this new life in New York City in America. But obviously that didn't happen. So yeah, he was on a one-way journey at that time.
So these really are stories almost as far-fetched in its time as us talking about going to the moon or Mars, almost, isn't it? It's really going into a brave new world to start a new life, and going on his own to seeing if it was safe, and to establish base camp, and then come back to get his family. Is that literally how it was?
That's pretty much it, and bear in mind that he would never have been off the island of Ireland at that stage in 1912. He wouldn't have gone to England or anything like that. So, to travel across to America was a huge, big adventure for him. And nowadays we think nothing of getting on a plane and within 5 or 6 hours you're in the continent of America. But back then it took the guts of a week to get there. So it really was an undertaking. A lot of people from Ireland, especially the southern rural parts of Ireland, were on Titanic because they were starting over again. They'd sold up everything they had in order to buy tickets to head off to America and Canada and start new lives for their family out there. Most of the people who were in third class, the steerage class as it's also called, a lot of them anyway came from rural Ireland.
Oh, a lot of Irish people, obviously, because the ship left Ireland, didn't it? So, and give us some. And we've got a children audience here, so we're trying to keep this pitched properly. But tell us what Britain and England and Ireland were like at that time, because this was just before the First World War, wasn't it?
That's right. Here in Belfast was a bit different from the rest of the island of Ireland because we were making lots of stuff. There were lots of factories and foundries, and we had a very urban look to us. Back then, places like Manchester, Glasgow, Birmingham, the big cities that we know now, were all full of big factories employing thousands and thousands of people. And no different here in Belfast. We were the centre for shipbuilding. Where you are now, Nick, down at where Titanic Belfast is at the moment, is the site of Harland and Wolff shipyard. And it was the biggest shipyard in the world at that time. So there was a very stark contrast here in Ireland, certainly, between Belfast being this big city with lots of people and bustling and smoke coming out of factories, compared to rural farmland, people running little farms on most of the rest of the island. So a big difference between Belfast and the rest of it. But sometimes what I like to think about is my great-grandparents, if they were transported to today, what would they make of it, with planes flying overhead, and what's down in Titanic Quarter now with the big shiny building that you're in, and all of the technology that we have, the fact that, we can talk to people on the other side of the world and see them. I think their minds would be absolutely blown by how much things have advanced in about 110 years.
No, it really is quite remarkable, isn't it? And excuse my complete ignorance of Irish history, but there was a lot of poverty and had the Irish potato famine. When was that? Was that before, after, or around this time? Because obviously the Depression was after the First World War, wasn't it?
The potato famine was in the 1840s,
right.
So 1845.
Way out then,
for about
sorry.
5 years. No, that's okay. No reason why you should know. And that had such an effect on the island of Ireland because so many people died either from starvation or from disease, and so many people left Ireland and emigrated over to places like Canada and America to start over again because there just was nothing for them here. This part of the country, Belfast and County Antrim, County Down, where you are, it was touched by the potato famine, but less so because it was just beginning to industrialise. They were starting to set up factories, in other words, to make stuff and to give people jobs and another form of income. So it wasn't as badly affected here.
So
that stage. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
For all the Rocket Kids listening, the potato famine was a period in the history of Ireland when many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people died because they literally didn't have a crop of potatoes. Is that right, Sarah?
That's right, yes. People who were farmers at that stage were very reliant on the crop of potatoes, that they would grow in their own little allotment, their little gardens to feed their own families. They were working for big landowners, but they were also growing their own crops to feed themselves. And unfortunately, this fungus, this disease, got into the potato crop and it destroyed it in 1845 and then again the next year. And then there were no seed potatoes to plant in the following year. And eventually it sort of burnt itself out and they found a cure for the fungus. But yeah, they say 1 million died and 1 million fled, basically, because of the potato famine. The population of the Republic of Ireland is less now than it was in the 1840s. It's one of the only countries in the world that has a smaller population now than it did 150 years ago.
Wow. And it's interesting because even though I was 70 years out in terms of when the potato famine happened and when Titanic left to try and show those people a brave new life, 70 years isn't much really. I mean, we're celebrating on Friday 75 years of VE Day and the end of World War II, and these are still distant memories, aren't they? These are real periods that people remember. Are there many people alive still who were on the Titanic and who survived?
Unfortunately not. No, there's nobody still alive who was on board the Titanic. The last person to die was about 10 years ago, a lady called Melvina Dean, and she was from Hampshire. She lived out her days in Southampton, and she was only 9 weeks old when she was on Titanic. So obviously all of her memories were those that were told to her by her family and other people. But she and her family were heading off to new life in a place called Kansas City in the middle of America. And unfortunately, her father didn't make it off, as so many of the men didn't make it into lifeboats. And so she and her mother and her brother came back. And she was a great lady. You know, she was very happy to talk about it and to sign things for people because she really was a celebrity because she was the last survivor of the Titanic.
Right. And I mean, we're here at the Titanic Museum. You said we're in. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to get in. We've come all the way over here from London, came on the night ferry from Stranraer. I hope there were no technical boat spotters looking at the video there because it wasn't technically that boat. And they said they'd leave a key under a flower pot, and sadly they didn't. So we're actually outside. So I'm going to pull a few videos up. Could you tell us a little bit about the Titanic Museum and what you know of it? You've been in, I presume, have you? You don't work for the museum, do you?
Yes, normally at this time of year I'm in there most days.
Oh, are you?
Showing them around.
So tell us what you do, Sarah. What is it you do?
Yeah, the Titanic Belfast, as it's called, was opened in 2012, just to coincide, to mark 100 years since Titanic's maiden voyage. And what it does is to tell the story of how Titanic was built and why and what life was like in Belfast at that time, and what the average worker would have been doing in his day to help build Titanic. And then it moves things on so that you see what life was like on board. You see some of the cabins recreated, and you see some of the artifacts of the time, the sort of dishes that people would have eaten off, and what the decor was like. And then you see what it would have been like when they called at the various ports. And everything's going well, and of course then things start to change, and she hits the iceberg and things start to go badly wrong. So you hear the distress calls that she was sending out to other ships, including her own sister ship, Olympic, and how they started to offload the passengers and just the panic that there was. And you hear from people like Melvina Dean and some of the other survivors who gave their opinions over the years. And so it really does take a turn when you get about 3/4 of the way through the exhibition. You start to feel that sense of eeriness, and the temperature drops, and you get the idea of what it would have been like for passengers once the ship hit the iceberg. And then once that's happened, you go through to galleries which talk about the various inquiries that there were into what happened to Titanic and what went wrong. Excuse me. And then you hear about Titanic today, and you know, all the cultural references that we have, the movies that have been made about Titanic, and you know, it tries to answer the question as to why people are so fascinated still with the Titanic, even though it's 108 years ago. And then you see some footage from the wreck of Titanic.
So we're actually looking, just so you know, we've actually got a 3D video off YouTube playing at the moment, which is taking us through the engine rooms, the big steam engines powering away. I'm sure you're familiar with this. And we're now looking at we're now looking at all the pressure dials of all the steam and the pressure that's fueling. I mean, the scale of this is quite phenomenal, isn't it? These machines and these steam engines. How many of those were in there?
There were 3 engines, which doesn't seem like a lot for a big ship like Titanic, but they were hugely powerful steam engines, some of the biggest ever built. And that's actually what my great-grandfather was doing before he signed up to be on the crew. He was one of the engineers who was helping to build the parts for those engines and put them together.
So
So
he actually worked in the shipyard. He worked
Mhm.
he worked in a shipyard, did he?
Yes, he worked there in Harland and Wolff before he switched to be a White Star crew member. So yeah, you can only imagine the noise that those engines would have put out, and all the stokers keeping those boilers filled with coal. So they had to work very hard below decks,
And
shoveling coal
we're
to
now
keep
up
those
on
fires.
we're now up on the deck. We can see some big winching machines and air conditioning, possibly pumps, ventilation systems. Just walking
Yes.
through, there's little roped off air. So it was very, very classy, wasn't it? You could only go in certain areas depending on your class, couldn't you?
That's right, yes. The ship was divided up into first and second and third class for the passengers. So, when things started to go wrong, a lot of those third class passengers didn't know how to get up onto where the lifeboats were stored because they'd never been there. They'd only been within their various um, quarters. So, they didn't know what was up in first class and how to get there. So there was a lot of confusion, and that's why so many of the third class passengers end up being lost because they just didn't know how to get up to the boat decks.
Well,
That's great.
we're
What
in
you're
a,
showing now, it's like being in a big elevator going up through from the very bottom of the ship right up to the top.
well,
Posh
we're in a
bits.
very, very posh room now, which reminds me a bit of my grandma's drawing room. Not really, but it's very posh. Lots of fancy chairs and tables laid out. This is a dining room, is it, for the first class customers? Is it? Looks like the Queen's
That's right,
dining room.
Yes, yes, very, very opulent. The finest of fabrics and everything imported from Europe. The finest of stuff for people to sit on and to dine off because they paid a lot of money for these tickets and they expected to have this amazing travel experience when they were on board.
It really does look like being in the fanciest hotel in the world. The quality of craftsmanship and the woodworking and what we're looking at now, this is obviously not the real thing. This is a computer model that they've built and they've got, this is a display at the museum we're looking at the moment, is it?
Yes, it is. Yes, when you get into this section of gallery that talks about what life was like on board, and not only do you have those mock-ups of the various cabins, but you can stand in a big, they call it the cave. It's very dark, and all of this moves on a screen in front of you, so it's like you're in a glass elevator going up through the ship.
Wow, so basically the structure that we see outside that looks like a star from above but looks like the bows of the Titanic, those are almost like 4 different wings that have projections on, and you go up a lift or you walk up inside it, do you?
Yeah, just within one of the galleries, you stay still and it all moves in front of you.
Wow.
So it can make people feel a bit dizzy until they get used to it. But yes, it's the idea that you're just going up through the center of the ship. Titanic Belfast has become such a landmark here in the city because it's such a strange shape and it's all shiny and pointy and silver. And when they first talked about building it, people thought, "Wow, is that really going to fit with some of the Victorian architecture? The old buildings that were there when Titanic was being built." But actually, I think it works really well because when you're coming up Belfast Lough, say you're coming up on a cruise ship up into the city, you see this very strange-looking building as if it's been parachuted in from another dimension, and it really draws people's attention, and they want to know what's in there.
Fantastic. And when did it open, Sarah?
2012 was when it opened,
wow.
so that they could mark the anniversary of Titanic's loss and her departure from Belfast.
I'm not being funny,
so there's
but
been millions of people through it since that. People come from all over the world to come and visit.
I'm one of those people, I wouldn't say my glass is half empty, but my brain is half empty or half full, depending on how you look at it. And I do find I miss a lot of things. And I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of this. And is it a bit of a well-kept secret, or am I just completely culturally illiterate, do you think?
No, I think it's definitely become very well known. And as I say, people come from all around the world. But sometimes it's the things that are on your doorstep. You're not that far away from us over in England. Sometimes it's those things that you kind of missed,
Yeah.
So maybe that's why. But anybody who's interested in the world of Titanic would know about Belfast. And for so many years, we didn't tell our stories. We just kept it all to ourselves. And it's only within the last 10 years or so that we decided that we need to share all these great stories with everybody coming to visit and try and get them to come and see us here in Belfast.
Well, I must admit, I did look on the internet for about 10 minutes. This is all rather a roller coaster ride, so I've got 24 days like this to plan in 24 hours. I did notice there's a Titanic museum in America as well, where they've been a bit more literal and obvious. They've actually built a sort of model of Titanic in their car park, haven't they? Have you ever been to that one out of interest?
Yes, well, there's a couple that have that theme. There's one in a place called Missouri in the middle of America, and there's one in Tennessee, which is slightly more south. And it's interesting you should mention those because, yes, I have visited. And I was talking about the pennies that my grandfather was given by his father. That's where they are. They live in the Titanic Museum in Branson, Missouri.
Oh,
They're
wow.
on display there along the whole section about my great-grandfather. So, yes, I visited them a couple of times.
That's fantastic. And how, I mean, obviously I don't want to get you into trouble in your hometown, but how would you compare the two? Are you going to be politically correct and say they're both different in their own ways, or are you going to put yourself on the line here?
It's everybody has their own interpretation. Everybody has their own way of looking at the Titanic story, and that's what makes it so fascinating. So,
Sure.
You have museums all over the place. There's one in Southampton. There's one in the south of Ireland, a place called Cove. There's ones in places that have very little connection to Titanic, and they all just have their own spin on it, their own way of talking about it. Us in Belfast, we're the only ones who can talk about the backstory of Titanic, about what happened to her before, how she came to be, who built her, who were these characters that helped to bring her to life. So, we're lucky in that we have got all those years we can talk about that nobody else can have.
Sure.
We built her. So I think that's our strength, whereas others have their own strengths as well. So, yeah, I'm sitting firmly on the fence.
And let's face it, there's only one Sarah Miller, isn't there? And she's in Belfast, so... I mean, I think one of the things for me with a lot of these things is I would imagine that the Belfast Titanic is newer of the other museums. Is that the most modern of all of them?
Yes, I would say so. Which has
to give it a massive advantage because of the use of technology, if nothing else, because it looks as if they've used state-of-the-art building materials and technology to present an experience for those boys and girls and their mums and dads and carers who come in to see the video. And I'm somewhere under here. I meant to get it out actually. Oh, it's, yeah, here. I'm going to disappear into the lower decks for a moment, but I'll keep talking to you. It's one of my favourite bits of technology, and that is just a simple bit of cardboard. Oh, I've just blown it completely, haven't I? Blown my credibility and cover there. So basically what we've got here, and I'll just turn this on so you can see, or you could see it, I didn't turn you off before, is a Google Cardboard VR headset. And looking through this and on a smartphone, you can actually see in 3D. I'm sure you're familiar with this sort of technology. And I've got a 3D camera, and on Saturday, on Friday, we did a parliamentary launch for our UK Art Takeover in Parliament. And I used some film that I'd taken. I don't know if you remember when there was a big demonstration in Parliament about the Brexit thing, and they pulled a big banner over this Parliament Square. Did you ever see that? Mm-hmm. They unrolled a big banner the size of a football pitch. Well, actually, I was underneath that when they did it, and I filmed it in 3D. And I used that film in one of our promo films the other day to pretend that it was one of our banners that were unfolding with Elton John on it. And my mum was watching it, bless, and she thought I was really there because it was so realistic. And she couldn't believe that I'd got 20,000 people out into Parliament Square, totally ignoring social distancing, to do a little demonstration to promote Steamco, which I thought was quite sweet. But what I'm going to do is, what I'd love to do one day is to come to the Belfast Museum with my 3D camera and we could take some photos so that children all over the country who'll never get the chance to go to Belfast could see that. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about technology. Have they got 3D like that in the Titanic Belfast Museum?
Yeah, I mean, probably the most technological thing is what you've been showing, that video that goes up from the engine rooms right up to the top deck. But yes, it is very much designed so that the kind of folk that are watching this now, your primary school children, can get something out of it, and they're not looking at a whole lot of dusty books and things like that. Sometimes when you talk about going to a museum, it can be, that sounds a bit boring, but this it definitely is not. It's designed to keep your attention with lots of technology and lots of stuff that you can look up. So say, for example, you're doing a project on Titanic, and you have a particular interest, maybe in a person or something about the story. you can go on to the keyboards that are around the museum and look it up for yourself and find out what happened to that person and a little bit more about them. So yeah, it's very much designed to keep your attention and to have lots of technology in use.
Absolutely.
I think one of the best things is to be able to see what the wreck looks like now, that underwater footage which ends the tour around the exhibit is really quite moving. When you see Titanic and you see little bits of people's stuff that's lying on the ocean bed, that's a great use of technology as well.
Fantastic. Well, I'm just about to. I'm making a phone call now, actually. I'm making a phone call to a very, very special person. Let me see if I can get him up on the screen. Hello, Macaulay, up there in Leeds. Can you see me? Can you hear me, Macaulay? You're going to speak?
Hi.
Hello. Can you turn your television down, Macaulay? Turn the television down. If you've got YouTube on your television, can you turn it down, because it will interfere a little bit. So I want to introduce you to an amazing, amazing person, because I know you've got lots of questions to ask, I'm sure. I've just got to get all these things plugged in. So Macaulay, can you turn your phone round on its side so it's widthways?
Not my phone, mum's.
Oh, it's not your phone, it's your mum's. Okay, well, that's a slight factual incorrection on my part, but sorry about that. So let's get, oh, that's interesting. It doesn't want to do that, does it? Okay, so I've got some technology here which doesn't seem to want to flip you around. So go back as you were, Macaulay. That's my mistake. We're going to have put you in the middle over here. Okay, let's put you over there, Macaulay. So on the screen now, we have got me and Macaulay from Leeds and Sarah, who's in Belfast, Macaulay.
I'm Susie.
Oh, okay.
Hang on a second. Speak again, Macaulay.
Okay.
I wonder if I think that's coming out of my iPhone. It doesn't seem as if the audio's coming out of the
Nick.
Okay, well, I think we can all hear you, Macaulay. Don't worry if you can't see me. Sarah, you may not be able to hear Macaulay because of the way that the audio's working. So Macaulay, have you got a question for Sarah about you, because you're a bit of an expert about the Titanic, aren't you? What facts? Tell me 2 show-off facts that you know about the Titanic.
It had 3 sisters.
Who had 3 sisters? You did. You've only got one.
Titanic.
You've only got one sister. You told me Kaylin was your only sister.
No, the Titanic had 3 other ships.
Did it?
2 were after it and 1 before it. There was the Olympic, the one before it, the Britannic, which was a warship that transported people from World War II. I think 1, whatever. And there was the Lusitania, sank sideways.
Well, it does sound like you know what you're talking about. Is that true, Sarah? Does he get a point for that?
You get a point for that, yes. Titanic was the middle sister,
Yeah,
so
that's
Olympic
true.
and then Britannic.
Wow, fantastic. So, Macaulay, okay, well, you've got 1 point. And I was going to say you get an I Love Art t-shirt if you get them right, but it looks like you've got an I Love Art t-shirt on already, have you? Let's have a look at that t-shirt you've got on. Where'd you get that from?
In Tesco.
Where did you get that from?
No,
Where did you get it
my
from?
mum did that.
Say again, Macaulay, where did you get it from?
Community hub.
Oh, at the Seacroft Community Hub at
Community
Tesco's. When we came up and did a community day in Tesco's on the estate there. Fantastic. So what's your next amazing fact? Let's see if you've got a fact that Sarah doesn't know, because she thinks she knows it all, and I'm determined to show her that a little lad from the Leeds, off Seacroft in Leeds, knows something that she doesn't know. Come on, think really hard. Oh, I can feel you thinking from here. Oh, Macaulay. Oh, go on.
It actually wasn't due to the iceberg the Titanic sank.
Say again.
It actually wasn't due to the iceberg that the Titanic sank. It was due to the fire in an engine room, which caused the titanium to weaken, and it then hit the iceberg and sank.
So the iceberg didn't sink Titanic, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Is that true,
It was-
Sarah? It wasn't really an iceberg, but it was something else?
Yeah.
No. This has come up in the last couple of years. A journalist from Ireland wrote a book about a fire down in the engine room that might have weakened the steel, and because it collided with the iceberg, then it would have had made more damage, basically. But some of our members here in the Belfast Titanic Society have done their own research into this, and they've looked at where that fire would have been in comparison to where the ship hit. And they're not so keen on that idea. It's one of those things. It's open to your own interpretation. It's what you think. This is the whole thing about Titanic. In a lot of ways, there's no right and wrong answers. It's just how you look at the facts and what you think yourself. So I'm not going to say that Macaulay's wrong. I'm just going to say that there are some people who don't think that's true. How about that?
And that's what you've got to prove, Macaulay. Maybe one day in your life you'll get the chance to help prove them right or wrong, because the world's got enough fake news in it, hasn't it? We don't need any more fake news kicking around. But that's a great question, Macaulay, and you're not right and you're not wrong, and I think that's really interesting. Have you got another one, Macaulay? Because I'm dying. I've got one fact that I know that Sarah and you won't know about Titanic. So you give me one more first and see if you can get 3 in a row. I mean, she might not have seen Titanic 2. You never know. So if you can think of something in that she doesn't know. The world is waiting with bated breath, Macaulay.
You know when the Titanic snapped?
The Titanic
snapped straight down.
Can you hear him, Sarah? Sorry. Can you hear Macaulay speaking?
I can hear him. Some of it I can't make out.
Don't worry, no, because we haven't patched you on the audio properly. So he says, when Titanic snapped, go on, Macaulay, I'll repeat your question. When Titanic snapped,
it was due to the water pressure pulling the front bit down.
It was due to the water pressure pulling the front bit down. And what Macaulay... Yeah. So that was a fact. That was a statement of fact, was it? You're showing off your facts, aren't you? That's good. So a bit like rockets use forces to go up, Titanic used forces to go down, really, then. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying, Macaulay? That forces, in the way that forces make rockets go up, the forces also made the Titanic go down.
Yeah, due to the weight of the ship.
Weight of the ship and gravity. Very, very good. Do you want to know my amazing fact? This is actually a conspiracy theory. And conspiracy theories are quite dark and mysterious. Do you know how many funnels Titanic had?
Mm-hmm.
Macaulay? 4. And do you know how many steam engines Titanic had? How many?
20.
No, 3. 3 steam engines, but 4 funnels. Why was that?
You know, Macaulay?
Because you have 1 steam engine has a funnel. So why were there 4 funnels but only 3 steam engines powering the ship?
Actually not sure about that.
Well, I've caught you out. Yes. Sarah, do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Conspiracy theory of the day is to be revealed from Belfast to shatter those illusions in Yorkshire. Go for it, Sarah.
It's Susie, but yeah, the 4th funnel was because they needed to have ventilation, and it's also for show, because at that time White Star ships were competing with another company called Cunard, and their ships had 4 funnels. So a White Star had to have Titanic and Olympic have 4 funnels as well.
So really, it
also gives some ventilation.
So it's actually showing off, Macaulay, because all their competitors had 4 funnels. If they'd only had 3, people wouldn't have paid all that money to go on it. They wouldn't have thought it was the best ship in the world. So they actually had, you've heard of fake news, well, it was a fake funnel. There you go. It was a fake funnel, but they did use it for air, and for air to go in and not smoke coming out.
So they had 1 fake funnel.
A fake funnel. I'm so glad to tell you that. This is what the internet was invented for, Macaulay. You've got to see his face, Sarah. You can see it later. You could be catching flies with your mouth open like that, young Macaulay. So
if you ever see a painting of Titanic with smoke coming out of that 4th funnel, the back funnel, it's wrong.
Did you hear that, Macaulay? Sarah said, if you ever see a painting of Titanic with smoke coming out of the fourth funnel, you know it's a fake, because smoke never came out of the fourth funnel. How are you doing at school anyway, McCall? I'm going to have to go now, but everything all right at school?
I'm okay. I've now got a PC to do my work on and concentrate.
You've got to concentrate now. Have you doing any work at home? Your mum said you were really busy, which is good to hear.
Yeah, I'm doing some work.
Good.
Mainly on PC, and then after I've done my work, my mum lets me go on YouTube or games.
She lets you go on YouTube or games. Well, you make sure you keep learning on YouTube. Don't just sit there playing games all the time, will you? And every day at 10 o'clock, we're doing a Rocket Kids Club session for kids like you to learn to do cool things. Have you got a laptop there in your house?
I've got a PC.
You've got a PC, that's what I mean. Would you like me to send you a microbit computer so you can learn coding while you're on lockdown?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get one in the post for you today, and we'll teach you to do some coding. But you've got to tune into the Rocket Kids Club. There's a little lad on your estate called Rowan and his mum Leanne. They've got one, and I want you all to go back to your schools after lockdown. You to go back to Leeds East, and he'll go back to Parklands and teach all the other boys and girls how to do coding. Will you do that? Because I don't want you just playing games. I want you making your own games. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, when you hang up, I'm going to hang up now. But give your mum a big hug and your dad a big hug for me, Gareth and Karen there and Kaylin. Thank you very much for letting you come on the show. It's been brilliant to see you again. Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks for inviting me, Nick.
You're welcome, Macaulay. Always here for you, Macaulay. If ever you need any help, give me a shout. Well, there you go, Sarah. Connection. That's what the internet was invented for, isn't it? Hey, young Macaulay up there in Leeds. So we've now got to get these kids making boats. Are you any good at making things, Sarah?
Hopeless. Absolutely hopeless.
Absolutely hopeless. That's not the correct answer. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to get the children now to... Have you seen the little video we've been running this morning with the paper boats?
I did, yes. It was really good.
So the idea is we're going to get the children... We're going to sort of... I'll probably let you go now for a moment. We're going to spend 5 or 10 minutes just talking about making boats. And then what we want to do is to get the kids to send in pictures of their boat on a blue or a green background, and then we're going to put them in a little video of lots of boats in the harbour there on top of Titanic. Would that be appropriate? Because obviously things in, photos and imagery of things in the water, but I think it was a happy moment when the boat left Belfast, wasn't it? Do you think that should be celebrated?
Yeah, what you've got there in the video is when she was leaving Southampton with all the passengers on board, which is it's better because, when she left Belfast, she only had a few people on board, just a few crew. So what you've got, as you say, is a happy occasion as she leaves Southampton. So absolutely good to, there would have been boats going out with her at that time. So it makes total sense to do what you're doing. I did make a slight mistake in my email yesterday to you, didn't I? I said talking about the Titanic leaving Liverpool, and you did point out that Titanic had never ever been anywhere near Liverpool. I know, it's confusing because she's got Liverpool written on her stern, you see. I see. If you look at the back of Titanic, so that's why people think that she's got this connection to Liverpool, because the White Star Line was based there. Okay, so the film that we're showing is actually Southampton. So basically, built in Belfast, run round to Southampton, picked up the passengers, and then off to New York. Basically, that's how it ran. Well, I've learned a lot today. This is what I call cultural capital. This afternoon, 3 till 5, we're going to be doing a sort of more grown-up adult show. Are you available to pop back for 20 minutes or so later on? Sure, love to. And if you could put a shout out to anybody like you who can broaden the thing today, because we're talking about the art of Belfast, where art is what we call it when what we do connects us to somebody else. Art is about creativity, it's about tools or technology and people. And for me, your art is your cultural heritage, your passion, your storytelling, the way you bring the story of your great-grandfather to life, the way you bring that story of aspiration, of making, of a spirit of adventure, the way you bring that to life, I think is really powerful. So if you could join us, but if you know any poets or any guitar players or painters or artists who'd like to come on, put a shout out, we'll Skype them in and we'll have a little chat between 3 and 5 o'clock this afternoon, and do tune in at 2 and see what happens as well with our boats. Thank you so much, Sarah. I can't thank you enough for popping in at such short notice. We'll speak later on. Bye-bye. Okay. All right, bye. Wow, what a morning. What a morning. You can't make this up. Literally,
emailed the Belfast Titanic Society yesterday afternoon at the recommendation of Belfast Titanic Museum. Within an hour, Sarah had emailed and volunteered her services to help. But one of the tour guides, one of the many people in Belfast who were so proud of the city's heritage, and it was there, I didn't ask Sarah to say that, but that proud heritage of industry, of making, of celebrating, of communicating, of connecting, just fantastic. So it's lovely. And how ignorant am I to not have even been aware of this fantastic museum in Belfast. And as soon as this lockdown's over, I'm going to be getting over there for sure. It looks wonderful. I do like a video, as I'm sure you've noticed. So what we want everybody to do today is to get involved and make some boats, as you saw in the films running there. And I'll just pull that film up again for us all to have a quick look at. So basically, this is a little film that I took off YouTube, which I believe is copyright free because of the timing, and using Adobe Premiere and video editing tools, which are very, very easy to find on iPhones, tablets, smartphones, Android devices. You can photograph things on coloured backgrounds and then remove that colour when you put it in a video. So here are my pieces of paper. There's my piece of magic paper in the middle there, whoops, which you can see. And I've got a magic piece of paper at the back. This one here is pretty magic because it's transparent. That is because it is green. And I have got a special green system. So I'm in a room here. The secret is that I'm not really in Belfast. I am actually here in the community lock-in, which is a special place that was built for us, and we've built actually with support from an organisation called LGFL, who are a big internet company who do all the internet for London schools and now increasingly across the country. And I've just got lots of computers and video systems and a big green screen behind me. Can you see the big green screen behind me? You should probably be able to see that. And this is just my office. So if I pan around the room, you'll be able to see my messy desk, because I didn't have time to tidy, because everything that was over here I had to put over there. So why isn't that turning very nicely? That doesn't want to, oh, there we go. So that's my messy desk, and there's the camera that's filming me, and over there, look, is a video wall with all the pictures and all the videos that I have to look at. And I'm over here on green, and I've set this special thing here up. This is called a vision mixer. It's a bit like DJs use for mixing music, but this machine mixes video. Just tighten that up and I'll zoom in on that again for you. So this machine that you can see here mixes video in. 8 different channels of video. And I've got it set up at the moment so that when it sees anything that's green, when I press this button here, it makes it disappear. So that green has disappeared. Okay, so that's the real background. And then when I do that, it disappears and goes green. I could make it so that blue disappears when I press the buttons here. Now this is going to take a little bit of jiggling. I have to go down and change my option. Where are we? Here we go. I'm going to make it so that everything that's blue disappears. And can you now see that the blue has disappeared, but the green is staying green? If I change the setting, everything that's green disappears. So if you send a picture of your boats today and you use a blue background, I'll have to set the blue button, and if you use a green background, I'll set the green background. What's important is that if you make a boat that is blue, make sure you take a picture of it on a green background. And if you make a boat that's green, make sure you put it on a blue background. And then what I'll be able to do is put it on a picture of the sea and a picture of Titanic leaving port, as we've just found out, leaving Southampton. So how are you going to make your boats? What sort of boats are we going to be making? Well, you could make boats by folding pieces of paper like this. And if you go on the internet, I'm not going to tell you how to do it because I want you to learn. I want you to do it with your parents and your creative carers, aunties, uncles, all sorts of people. I want you to all do this together. I want you all to make paper boats together. You could fold them, you could glue them. There are lots and lots of different ways of making things. And here we are, let's cut back to that camera there. And here I am folding a piece of paper. I'm going to make a very simple paper boat like this. Like that, you fold that there, and then you fold that up there like that. And then you fold the back there like that. And then you fold it and pop those little bits underneath there and that little bit under there like that. And then you fold that up like that. And that up like that. This is me flashing back to when I was a little boy, the last time I did this. And there's my boat. That's a hat, isn't it? How do you make a boat? You have to do something to fold the middle in. Let's have a look. Is it something like that? And like that. And then you sort of push it through. Oh, I don't know. My boat's just collapsed. My boat's just become a little coracle by the look of it. Well, not to worry. If you've got some lollipop sticks like this, you might make a mast. You could put a mast in your boat. Oops. If you've got some glue or a glue stick or I'm going to look up how to do that. I did look up yesterday and I've forgotten. You could put a little sail on that. So if you've got some nice coloured paper or some ordinary paper, you could make a little sail. So I'm going to put a green sail on mine like this. And I'm going to put, there we go, this is a bit rubbish. But this is where I want to see all those art teachers, all those fantastic children, everybody making some super little boats. And you can't see my sail. Why can't you see my sail? Because I made it green, didn't I? That was a little bit silly. Just to prove that, there you go, there's my green boat. And when I press my fader, it disappears. Not to worry. Okay, so who's going to make some boats with us today? I'll put some pictures up on the internet. What I want you to do is to put them on social media, Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, with hashtag art of boats, hashtag art of Belfast, hashtag let's create at home. I should probably pull those up. I'll put those on the website later, but you'll find them. We'll be back at 2 o'clock. We'll have a look at the boats that you've made. I'll hopefully have put some on the video, so the sooner you can get them to me, the better. If you want to come on the show later on at 2 o'clock to talk about your boats or to tell us what you know about Titanic or some exciting places you've been to do with boats and ships, then let us know. We'll be looking for people to Skype in later on, just like Sarah and Macaulay did there. Have we had any comments here? We haven't had any comments on the video stream here. We've got a few people watching, which is great. Check us out at 2 o'clock for half an hour. We'll look at what you did. And then if you're a grown-up, an artist, a technologist, an engineer, a member of the community, and you want to get involved in our Art Connect show, 3 till 5, then drop us a line, YouTube, message via YouTube, or you could email us yourturn@steamco.org.uk. Sign up on the website and be part of the UK Art Takeover. Today was all about the Rocket Kids Club, inspired by this amazing man, Homer Hickam, who joined us last week to announce that he's the patron of the Steamco Rocket Kids Club. With these two young girls, he told his story, he shared his experiences, and we let a rocket off here at the community lock-in that landed in the backyard of a school boys' house in Leeds. Thank you for watching. We'll see you at 2 o'clock. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whoa! Can you see that?
Oh, wow!
Can you see it? Whoa!
I know.
Thank you all for watching. We are pretending, we're using our imagination. We're having a fantastic time here today. I don't know if you saw, but I was up on top of Big Ben the other day with these signs, and I had to rush up there and take them down. And while I was up there, I made a big announcement about the Hey Kids Book Festival that we're launching at the end of the month. A literacy festival, a book festival for boys and girls just like you. Be part of that too. Whoa, this is pretty scary up here. Take those down now. I don't think we need that. So we'll just catch that, Dave. Yep. Sorry, mate. Oh, sorry. Birdman on the loose in Westminster. I want to talk to you about books just really quickly. I mean, this is a book that I'm particularly fond of at the moment. David Almond, My Dad's a Birdman. We're going to be announcing a massive book thing in the next few minutes, so stay with me. I love this book. This is a book about a dad after my heart. Dad is building a pair of wings, eating flies and feathering his nest. Auntie Doreen is getting cross and making dumplings. Mr. Poop is parading the streets, shouting louder and louder. And even Mr. Mint, the head teacher, is getting in a flap. And watching it all is Lizzie, missing her mum. No, not even missing her mum, missing her mam. And looking after Dad and thinking how beautiful the birds are. What's behind it all? It's the Great Human Bird Competition, of course. And that book is such an inspiration for me. It's a book about a dad who's a bit crazy, acts a bit crazy, to inspire his kids, to inspire other kids. He wants to fly over the River Tyne. He's covered himself in feathers. Very Icarus-y. So what's it all about? Well, we've got a book thing going on. I mean, I've got my favourite t-shirt on here. This was inspired by this book, the Seth Godin book. The Icarus Deception. And I know a few of you out there are fans of this, people like David Waring up there in Chester, and there's a lovely little piece in this. The Icarus Deception. It's about Icarus, as you know, the Greek myth, the boy who was told not to fly too close to the sun because his wings might melt. The boy who was told not to fly too close to the water because he might get wet and drown. He was given rules and to fly within those. We've got to help our kids fly high. We've got to help them aim high. We've got to help them find their passion. We call it their art. And in this book, Seth Godin talks about art is frightening. Art isn't pretty. Art isn't painting. Art isn't something you hang on the wall. Art is what you do when we're truly alive. If you've already decided that you're not an artist, it's worth considering why you made that decision and what it might take to unmake it. If you've announced that you've no talent in anything, then you're hiding. Art might scare you. Art might bust you. But art is who we are and what we do, and art is what we need. An artist is someone who uses bravery, insight, creativity and boldness to challenge the status quo. And an artist takes it all of it, the work, the process, the feedback from those we seek to connect with, very personally. Art isn't a result, it's a journey. The challenge of our time is to find a journey worthy of your heart and your soul. The 24th of April, we're going to be doing the Hey Kids Book Festival. And today, I'm launching the Pass of Kids book thing. So one of the books that's really inspired me is this book. And if you know anything about me, you'll know about this book. Rocket Boys, a story of 4 boys growing up in West Virginia in the 50s, didn't want to be coal miners, saw the Sputnik satellite and learnt to make rockets and ended up working for NASA. And Homer Hickam, the author of this book, sold millions of copies all over the world. Homer Hickam, the author of this book, has agreed to be the patron of our Rocket Kids Club, which is an incredible honour. One of the things we want to do with our Hey Book Festival, Hey Kids Book Fest, is to inspire people to share their love of reading, to share their favourite books. And I'm working with Rich Simpson, who's a fantastic primary teacher down there on the Isle of Wight, who I met when we did when we did an Isle of Wight art takeover. He had a really obvious passion for books. It was incredible how he was inspiring his Year 6 kids down there in his school. So what I propose today is that we start a hashtag Pass a Kids Book. And I'm going to chuck this book down to Rich Simpson, down there in the Isle of Wight somewhere. I think over that way somewhere. I'm going to chuck, or is it over there? Maybe over there. I'm going to chuck this book over to Rich Simpson and hope you can catch it. Catch this, Rich. Oh, there we go.
Well, thanks for the recommendation, Nick. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Everybody I've given a copy of the Rocket Kids book. I would love you to make a film of you catching that book, picking up a book that you're going to pass on and pass it off the screen, and let's do one of those keepy uppy but with books to celebrate children's reading, to celebrate children's literature. And the people I'd love to see involved in this would be David Waring up there in Cheshire. I'd love to see Simon Kidwell involved. Simon Smith over in Whitley Bay, who's fantastic with his picture book work, and I'd love to see a 60-second film by any of those people with those books. Dave Shakeshaft, Chris Tolson, Chris Dyson, Rachel Snake, all these people I've given a copy of this book to. I'd love to know what you think, and share, spread the love. I'm trying to think of that lovely head teacher at Woodlands Primary in Chester, actually, I gave a copy to on her birthday, so I want to see you give us one of these. So pass the book, that's what that's all about there.